Interesting weather we're having today. It was like 70 degrees. I was out in the garden. I was like raking up leaves and thatch. This morning I woke up to 3 inches of snow on the ground. And next week it's supposed to be 80 degrees.
Yeah, it's just bananas, and the water situation every year is tough in Colorado, but right now it seems the toughest of our lifetime.
So, first of all, like we should explain to our viewers or listeners that you may have noticed that we posted episode 4 before we posted episode 3. And actually, there was some incompetence involved, but it wasn't the kind of incompetence that you thought. We did record an episode 3, and it kind of got lost in the shuffle. And we actually did an interview, which we're gonna introduce in a second. And then we actually had a whole episode around it. I was able to salvage the interview, and I'm embarrassed to say, or proud to say, it took me, I would say, about 2 weeks to figure out how to do all the editing. But we have salvaged the lost episode.
I'm glad we salvaged the interview because I think our listeners will find it pretty interesting. It is very rare to get that kind of on the ground and deeply informed perspective on certain aspects of our political climate in Colorado and nationally. And our guest was Ian Silverii, which people will see on the title. But I think we don't need to go too much longer here with this setup. I just thought it was fascinating to get that up close and inside baseball. What was your takeaway?
I think, as you'll see in the interview, Ian and I worked really closely together when I was at the Bell Policy Center and he was at Progress Now. And I think that the chapter in which we were working together was this chapter in which, Dems had clearly taken over the state. Colorado, had become blue, and we began to implement a number of very important policies, which of course took both policy, know-how as well as political know-how. And I think right now, if you think about where we're at and some of the fights that are breaking out, both between, sort of Dem on Dem disagreement, as well as the critique that we have been talking a lot about and that we did talk about in episode 4 and that we'll be talking about in other episodes, which is, has Colorado's climate changed significantly for business and for the economy? And I don't think either of us would say that we went too far. But what I think we would say is that there was a lot of change really quickly, and that some of those changes have had a negative impact on Colorado, or at least the political ecosystem in which big things get done.
He also really got into the fact that it's a really lopsided political ball field in terms of, are the Republicans competitive in either legislative races, congressional races, or statewide races, and how much it has changed in, say, 20 years. We talked about that a little bit. I thought that turn of the conversation was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it's that, I think what I've not seen and what I wonder is going to happen, we'll see how the Republican primary works out, right? It's interesting to me that, it is not a guarantee in any way, shape, or form. In fact, the odds are against Barbara Kirkmeyer, who's probably the most pragmatic, capable Republican in the field, actually winning that primary. And the question that begs for me is, where is the center, right? And where is the center going to emerge in our politics? Because what I think you'll see in the interview with Ian, and I talk about this a lot as well, is the Republican field is just completely out of touch with where most Coloradans are when you think about the blue-red dichotomy. But as we talk about in the episode, blue-red serves as a proxy for some issues, but not others. And so I think the question that emerges for me, and that we should continue looking at, but you see when we're talking to Ian, is this idea that we're not seeing a full expression of all the political vibes in this state, and that we're kind of stuck in this, not artificial, but not complete and not comprehensive dichotomy.
Yeah, two things. I think great point first. Three things. Great point. Two, anti-incumbency is now kind of a topic I don't know that we really expected we would have to pick up in such proportionality, I guess. Like now it's going to be a topic we're going to pick up, and then you said it's not the right picture. I think this highlights precisely the primary picture, and where is the center? The very passionate fringe, and I don't mean to use the fringe word the wrong way, are deciding who goes to the main game, and the nature of those conversations is just not centrist.
Yeah.
So it's all playing out in real time. It gives a disproportionate picture. And yeah, that'll be something to watch here as we get to the end of June 2026.
Yeah, and we should say the more notable thing about this morning is actually not the weather. Well,
No.
maybe it's the political weather, right? Because last night, and I'm sure we're going to see this play out in the news over the next couple of days. But yesterday was the assembly for Denver, and Jeffco and some counties had big assemblies, and we saw a huge anti-incumbent wave pull through. We saw Diana DeGette barely hanging on to the ballot.
Wow.
And in fact, she needs to go to her congressional assembly where her 33% could become 29%, and she may not qualify for the ballot. And then the other big thing that we saw was that Jenna Griswold, who I think many thought was going to be a sure thing for the ballot and be in the primary for attorney general, not do so great in the county assembly. And so, she's not, to my knowledge, she doesn't have a petition operation going on. And so there is this possibility, and we'll see what happens, that maybe she doesn't qualify. And so there's definitely something in the water. We should be really cautious in saying that the assembly process really does not represent all the dynamics in a primary, but there's something in the water and there's something going on. And I think what was really interesting, and we should probably just shift to the interview next, is that, and toward the end, I mean, you'll hear Ian talking a little bit about what are the incentives for political candidates, and overarchingly, where he thinks the incentives are is in messaging. It's not necessarily what you do; it's how you talk about what you do, and it's what you are signaling to the larger political ecosystem that matters far more than actually what you are doing and the policies you're passing.
Which is why we're doing our podcast, to get back to policy and thoughtful discourse. But if it's a throw the bums out year, it'll make for interesting conversation as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Look forward to the interview here.
All right, let's roll the tape.
All right. I'm really excited. I think every time we have a guest, one of us is excited. So we should probably try to stop saying we're excited. Trying to introduce you. You're not supposed to go
To the
Welcome to the podcast.
Who are you?
Ian Silverii. Welcome to Crux Politica. It's great to have
So happy to be here. What guest number am I?
you. You are number 3.
That's great. Behind such illustrious names as STC, and who was the other one?
We had Mike Beasley on in the last episode.
Beasley.
Yeah.
STC, Beasley, Silveri. It's a clear downward trajectory.
No, we're only going up from here.
That's great.
So you and I,
Oh my gosh.
we go back a ways, right? We've become really good friends. You're at the top of my text pin.
Pinned on my iPhone. Yep.
But let's talk a little bit about how we know each other, because it's funny. It's I do have very distant, foggy memories of you as like an aide at the state capitol.
I remember you showing me around your office and Joe Garcia's office and be like, when I'm a big boy, I'll get a big boy office too.
So you and I really got to know each other and work with each other. You were the executive director of Progress Now, and I, just like a year later after you became the executive director of Progress Now, I came in at the Bell Policy Center. And so we kind of had a show going on where it was like I was the policy and you were the politics, and that was a really fun time.
We had a great time. And do you remember there were a bunch of new EDs in the progressive spaces those days. So we all used to go drink at Union Station because those jobs were really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like the 16 to 20 era where Colorado Democratic progressive politics were just on jet fuel. And it was like we're kicking their asses, we're taking their names, and there's no stopping us, right? The red to blue shift was right in our grasp. And a lot of us feel like we played our roles in helping sort of facilitate that and maybe bring it forward to where it was when we left those organizations. And now I'll speak for myself, looking back at that work, saying, did we sort of overcorrect? Did we take it too far?
Well, we were just talking. I mean, so Henry and I were just talking a little bit, and you probably saw some of the headlines last week. State demographer made some comments on some new census data. What were the headlines that you saw?
Okay, so I tried to go back and look at it because it was a really truly bizarre one. Because the one that I remember, and this could have been a hallucination. I thought I saw a headline that said Colorado population limps past 6 million. And to me, it's like, that's an interesting editorial choice, right? Because like, that's a huge number of people in a state like this. Like only so many years ago, we just picked up a new congressional district in the 2020 redistricting cycle, for instance. And we all remember the headlines from the sort of boom years pre-COVID, which was 30,000 people moving to the state every single month, right? Colorado's open for business. The secret is out. All the politicians had kind of the same vibe on the language. But when I saw that limps past, and again, I could have made it up, but that sort of encapsulates, I think, what the vibe is versus the data, right? Where you had this United Van Line story come out just a few weeks ago saying that, oh, people are leaving and we're losing population. But the demographer, it's their job to accurately count the number of people here and project it. So I kind of take their word over some random trucking company, right? Because who among us uses United Van Lines? Who doesn't? And I think you could say that like net migration is still increasing.
Well, I mean,
could you?
I think they showed a little bit of still net, but they showed the people moving out. And I did a little bit of work on this as it happened during that week, that the forecast is for in-migration to return again. But we in the first segment, we were talking about some people took that as, oh, here we go. It's the blue state exodus. You talked about blue and red. How would you describe Colorado? Are we purple anymore?
No, I mean, like, no, we are bluing further blue. Like, look at Jeffco, look at Douglas, look at El Paso County, look at the statewide election results from 2022, 2024. Hillary wins by 6-ish in 16. Biden wins by double digits in 20, and then Trump loses by slightly lower double digits in 24. That, I think, had more to do with the sort of confusing nature of that election more than anything else. But look at Jefferson County. Jefferson County, Colorado was the bellwether county for the state and then for the country, as goes Jeffco, as goes Colorado, so goes the nation. We all remember this stuff. There is not a single statewide countywide elected office holder in Jefferson County that's a Republican. I don't believe there's a single state legislator in Jefferson County who's a Republican.
And so how do we reconcile that issue in terms of who's in power? Obviously not purple based on who's in power, but the largest registration for voters is unaffiliated.
Well, so I had a theory on that someone recently disabused me of. And my theory was that has a lot to, or at least something to do with automatic voter registration, because AVR makes you an automatic U. And unless you proactively go and register for a party, then you stay as that automatic U. And because we have open primaries and, like, let's face it, caucuses and assemblies aren't like the most fun one can have on a Saturday. People just stay as a U. I forget who told me that wasn't quite accurate, that yes, it's adding to the rolls, but people are also disaffiliating at the same time. Andy Kenney had this great story after January 6, 2021, which I think about all the time, where like 30,000 or something people just left the Republican Party overnight. And I don't think it's the magnitude of that is as great on the Democratic side right now, but we know that people are disaffiliating, and it's for sort of two different reasons. People are leaving the Democratic Party because they're not progressive enough, and they're leaving the Democratic Party because they perceive them as too progressive.
Yeah. So I play this role here on the podcast, which is matches up my real role, which is, former rhino.
Right.
So I unaffiliated from the Republican Party. I used to participate. And a lot of people who are still Republican or even conservative unaffiliated, you mentioned it, the Democrats may have gone too far on certain policies, drug policy, the homelessness situation in Denver, any number of things. Like, where do you think the corrections will happen?
So I think it's an interesting question, because I think there's a difference between the policy and the perceptions, right? And I think those two things sometimes align and sometimes are mismatched, right?
Tell us about the mismatches.
Well, I mean, like, there are various attempts every year at the legislature to do things like safe use sites for opioid users, but they don't pass. They get talked about, they get discussed, and then they get killed in committee. This session may change that. I mean, who knows? Like, that they might finally pass. And I think the last version of the policy was something like permitting local governments to have pilot programs or something like that, right? So I think that there are people who like see headlines flying by and they're like, oh no, safe use sites in Denver. Like, have the Democrats gone too far too fast? But I think I can talk about this. I had a client when I first started my company back in 2021 that asked us if Colorado was ready for an Oregon-style statewide decriminalization of drugs. And we went down the rabbit hole. We interviewed tons of grasstops leaders, tons of grassroots folks. We did a ton of polling, and we came back and said, the state is not ready for this right now. The political leadership is not here. They will probably run against it. You will probably lose. If you lose, it'll set your cause back. And the electorate is sympathetic to the idea, but understands Colorado has a very, very smart electorate, by the way. They fundamentally understand that we do not have the treatment and recovery infrastructure in the state that we would need to handle that policy shift. And then look at what happened in Oregon. The voters passed a statewide decriminalization of personal possession of drugs. I forget what year it was. And then a bunch of stuff happened. And then they repealed it. They said, we ran the experiment. The results are in. We do not like how this went. We're going to go backwards. That is fascinating because that almost never happens, right?
Yeah.
You kind of commit to the bit and then move forward and maybe change things around the edge.
In first part of the chat. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah. I mean, we were throwing around these terms like blue and red and progressive. Like, I think it's important to think about the general arc that this state has gone through. Like, I got here in 2000. At that time, Democrats were in the minority. I was working out of that little corner office
in the House, right?
In the House,
we had that one blip of a Senate majority for 2 years.
We had like a blip of a Senate majority, but I participated and got either a second row seat or a first row seat to like the Democratic takeover of the state. And what those elections were about was about rejecting the gays, guns, and God,
focus on the family,
right? Arch conservative social values, right? And that is how Democrats conquered the suburbs. We did not conquer the suburbs with our fiscal policies.
No, Tabor remains like very popular as a concept, right?
So I think for me, what like gets challenging is like we say purple, blue, red, progressive. Like what I think blue in Colorado means not crazy about social issues. And that's about all it can tell you.
Well, I'll take it one step further because my friends and I and my co-conspirators and projects and whatnot talk about this all the time. I think three things are true all at the same time. Democrats have sort of picked the lock on the electorate in this state and know how to talk to voters in order to get them to vote for more of us than them. The electorate is just wired up to be anti-Trump. This is a state that the majority of voters look at that guy and say no fucking thank you to the vast majority of everything you're talking about. I mean, the decrease in vote share for Democrats from 20 to 24, like I said, I think had more to do with like the ticket switch and the economy and the fact that every ruling party in the entire world at that point lost vote share, if not lost elections. Like, so there were all these inputs. You had the horrible inflation going on that like we could discuss whose fault that is at length if we wanted to. I think there's plenty of blame to go around. But the third thing is that Republicans in this state as a party are just fucking bad at this stuff. From a tactical and strategic level, they are incompetent.
I was at someone's house the other day and I went through their mail as I like to do when I go for people's houses, and they had gotten...
Is that a felony?
It's a felony.
Did you have their permission?
I asked their permission.
Inside the house.
There's a great dead Kennedy
song. So anyway, I saw a
mail.
Victor Marx mailer.
Incredible.
And just the messaging was just so crazy to me, like right on the front of the envelope, God has a plan.
Hell yeah.
And, I'm going to deliver that plan. And I think what's so interesting to me, and I certainly as like a Democrat and as liberal, I'm not wishing for their success, but I do not understand how Republicans have remained so tone deaf. And that if they would just ease it up on abortion, if they would just not be, and I guess you are who you are.
Heidi Ganahl tweeted yesterday, we should really be looking into the 2022 election. Yesterday. I mean, what? The brainworms on the right side and the internet of it all and the sort of closed system communication of it all has just driven them further and further into the wilderness to the point where their mental model is Joel Altman, Heidi Ganahl, some of these other, Tina Peters, their mental model is actually we win elections here. They just cheat. So why would you change your policy if you think you're actually winning? You need to change the mechanism of vote counting.
Well, and I think this is
according to
I think this is
conspiracy.
instructive. And I think this is a truism in politics, and I think getting to your I want to hear more about how you reflect upon your career and the things that you've worked on. But I think it's really important. Do not drink the Kool-Aid. Do not drink your own Kool-Aid.
Always be self-critical, always be improving, always red team your own ideas. This is the role that I play in most of the projects that I work on professionally. Is I'm going to try to take apart our strategy and poke every single hole in it possible, and therefore you see the angles coming around the bend and you can adjust for them or correct for them or inoculate against them. But I think there's something that you said that I want to just add some things to, because I work in a lot of red states around the country. I work in a lot of purple states around the country. Something I've noticed with one party rule, whether it's Democrats or Republicans, there are these phenomena that occur when there's a non-competitive opposite political party, right? So in Colorado, in our case, it's Republicans. In, let's say, Iowa's case, it's Democrats, or Indiana's case, it's Democrats, right? The ruling party tends to become, and I'm not accusing us of this yet, but I'm saying that you can start to see some of the excesses develop because a competitive opposition party puts pressure on the party in power to behave themselves, to work slowly, to work methodically, to work intentionally, and to not go too far too fast to create backlash. Having an absence of that in Colorado's case, or in any of these states' cases, so Republicans in Indiana, for instance, the ruling party can become, and again, I'm not saying we're here yet, but I'm saying it's a warning to us if we don't watch ourselves, lazy, corrupt, and extreme. And I think you see the extremism coming out of some parts of the party. The Republicans are fully baked. There's no such thing as a moderate Republican in Colorado anymore. Henry's an ex-Republican. Cole Wist is an ex-Republican. Kevin Priola is a fucking Democrat. Like, if you went back in time with me to 2006 and you were like, Kevin Priola is going to be a Democrat in 12 years, I would have laughed you off the face of the earth.
And there's no Republicans from Jeffco in the legislature, for example. So for the disaffected group, that is probably some still registered Republicans, a big chunk of unaffiliated. What's the option to create some of this dynamism? Because I'm in circles where these Democrats are taking the state the wrong direction, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Well, your tactical options are fairly limited. I mean, you can primary more progressive Democrats with more centrist Democrats, and it looks like someone's trying that theory out, right? Or a few people are trying that theory out. And then, or you can try to educate the ruling legislators about the negative consequences, intentional or most likely unintended consequences of their policy choices. And I think one thing that I'm hearing a lot, and get yelled at on the internet about saying this, is it's not that the policies are bad. It's not that the ideas are bad. It's that there was so much happening so fast that especially small businesses could not possibly comply with 30 to 50 new regulations in a very, very short amount of time. So they just end up struggling to do that. And I wonder if the idea that, especially with Trump doing horrible, unspeakable things to this country and to this state on purpose every single day as a matter of course, creates this incentive to just do something. We must do something to stop this from happening. So what can we do to stop this?
We are positing that talking to each other more holistically, calmly, that we're Americans, that we're Coloradans, that we're humans. Our tilting at a windmill is that there has to be some kind of basis to have this discussion that isn't just I'm on team A and you're on team B.
Isn't there also a fundamental disconnect in what people believe is reality and what people believe is true?
Yes.
I can't have a conversation with somebody who thinks Venezuela or Italy stole the 2020 election.
We have a different algorithm. And so your reality might have been completely misshaped and you don't even know the extent to which there's another channel to watch.
I never thought my epistemology classes in college would ever come in handy, but I think about them every single day.
How do you know what you know?
And I now question my own sanity on a very regular basis because I'm just mainlining shit Silveri all the time, right? I am taking in the bulwark and the argument and the Sam Harris. I mean, so the things that I'm listening to and absorb, and I read leftist stuff, I read Jacobin, I read super progressive things to just check myself. I try and read intellectual conservatives, but a species that is becoming endangered, if not entirely extinct at this point. It's kind of hard to find, right?
I feel like Trump, I mean, here's I have many takes on this, but I think like Trump has made Democrats lazy. Like I have,
Yeah,
because having such a strong Voldemort-like character on the other side that and creates such a clear, you know, and you talked earlier about having a resistance party or an opposition party that's not holding you accountable. We have spent so much time just so clearly understanding what Trump is and how bad he is that we have stopped thinking about like the nuances of making good, like you talked earlier.
yeah.
I just want to make this point because it drives me crazy, and I'll get yelled at on the internet about this, but like it drives me crazy when I talk to my friends on the left and they talk about, well, there's big corporations and there's the working class. And I'm like,
And there's literally nothing in the middle.
Literally, right?
There is no shop owner, there is no small business, there is no restaurateur, there's nothing.
Makes us live in this world of just total polar, you know, extremes. And the reality is that when you're in that building and you're trying to make policy, like you do have to account for, you know, small businesses under 50. You do need to account for the fact that like, you know, LLCs are my point is that if you live in an ideological universe in which the whole world is the working class and big corporations, then you're going to miss a lot.
I mean, I've got bad news for you. The incentive structure that Donald Trump created for the behavior that has led to the behavior of Democrats and progressives in Colorado has given us absolutely nothing but total fucking victory. So why on earth would we ever change course?
Right. I mean, but that's what I'm saying. It's like, that's the problem though, is that
I agree
it's made us so lazy. And what I thought was really interesting, there was a poll released by the Colorado Polling Institute 3 or 4 months ago. You and I were at the same post briefing, and Coloradans are screaming in that poll for moderate. Now, we could have a whole conversation like, what does moderate mean?
I also think that all of these terms have become utterly useless.
I don't know what any.
Progressive means nothing. Leftist means nothing. Democrat, liberal, none of these terms mean anything at all anymore. The only people who seem to have a useful labeling is MAGA. Because you know what that means.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Well,
cult
I think the
leader
far left
first.
has good labeling. I mean,
what?
You know,
What's a leftist?
Well,
what is it? What are they? What's the policy plan?
I think there. Look,
and how is it different from progressive?
For leftists, there are certain North Stars: universal health care, social housing.
I believe in universal health care,
but I think for those, and one of these days we'll get a so-called leftist on this show. I think the thing that is that they don't believe that you should talk about the sausage making that gets you to that North Star. I just mixed a lot of metaphors, but like, it is not their responsibility to talk about how you get to a universal healthcare system. They believe that if you just need to fight and fight and fight for a universal healthcare system until you're blue in the face.
It's Overton window moving as political strategy.
Can you explain Overton window?
Oh, sure. So it's the idea of what becomes sort of like the base level of acceptability for the center of a argument. So right now, the American healthcare system is basically indefensible by anybody except for those who get paid to defend it, I think, right? And the center of gravity there is the status quo.
We pay more for worse outcomes compared to almost everywhere on.
What my friend Manny likes to say is we pay an extraordinary amount of money to a middleman for something that is not healthcare.
And we've heard President Trump talk about the middleman recently.
Well,
an interesting thing.
An interesting thing. Actually, I thought that was really interesting, and I knew, God, there's just like this evil genius to him. Like I knew he was going to go there.
It's populism. It's the same thing with the fucking credit card interest rate cap. A totally impractical policy that would destroy the economy that sounds really fucking good to anybody who's ever paid credit card interest.
So I think for folks on the left, I mean, Bernie Sanders is a great example. Bernie Sanders, all he does is he gets up and says, the largest healthcare companies in the country are taking money away from you, right? Like,
he's not wrong.
He's not wrong. But tell me how we get there, right? And I think that's where I see a bit of a disconnect.
So here's my recent, like, and this isn't like a counterexample because I actually don't have a better idea than Medicare for All at this point. So like, because the system is so bad and so broken. So like, I don't have a better idea than that. But what I try to say to my friends who are saying it's Medicare for all, or I'm not voting for this candidate for Congress or whatever, I would say, can you imagine a situation in which, let's say Joe Biden didn't focus on inflation and didn't focus on chips and didn't focus on, investing in infrastructure and IRA and all that stuff. And he just went completely head down on universal healthcare and passed Medicare for all the way you want it perfectly. I think that they wouldn't buy the premise because then Donald Trump would never be elected. But like, set that aside. What do you think these particular group of ghouls would be doing to that system right now if they got a hold of it? If Biden passed Medicare for All in 2021 and Donald Trump gets elected in 2024, what do you think they'd be doing to the American
I'll jump
healthcare
in
system
on that
right
one.
now?
I think Donald Trump understands how popular Medicare is. Social Security hasn't been touched much except for the server that got all our numbers maybe, but Medicare and Social Security, the core of it, basically, I think he knows that's a third rail.
Yeah, but they gutted Medicaid and they are gutting Medicare.
They are changing a few rules on Medicaid, and on the margin, it is causing a major budget headache here in Colorado.
Of course.
But in terms of gutting, that's an extreme. That's not what's happening.
If you let them continue to do what they would like to do, don't you think that Medicare and Medicaid serve fractions of the population that they currently serve over a decently short amount of time? Am I off base?
Can consult Project 2025 because the planet, because they've been following that
chapter and verse.
Yeah. So whatever's in there.
It's almost like people warned them about that.
It was almost like they wrote down what they wanted to work on
and then just went ahead and did it. Well, I guess my point is like they'd be kicking people off the rolls based on their nationality at this point. And that's what scares the shit out of me.
Very clear. That's what they're doing on Medicaid. Okay. They're not gutting Medicaid. What they're doing is using it to ostracize, marginalize, and kick people out. Right.
That's right.
So like that's what he would be doing with Medicare for All.
Well, somehow we only have a minute left. What do you want to discuss for the next 55 seconds?
Ian, what's going to happen with the Democratic Socialists and the Democrats here in Colorado? There's a little bit of an argument on business policy, and things like that.
Well, I hope that, look, there's a real enemy. There's a real opponent. And the real opponent is fascism. The real opponent is MAGA. The real opponent is Trump. So I think for the time being, we have March caucuses and June primaries in the state. We're going to have a conversation for the next couple months, right? You've got, John Hickenlooper running for re-election for U.S. Senate. You've got Senator Julie Gonzalez running against him from the left. Campaign finance reports came out a couple days ago. He's raised $1 million a quarter. He's got $4 million in the bank. She broke, I think, 170 or 180, which is just not enough to communicate to a statewide electorate to overcome the name ID and favorability of a guy like John Hickenlooper. I just think that is objectively true. Maybe I'll get yelled at about it. I've been yelled at by our fans on our podcast, the Get More Smarter Show, for saying similar things. That's fine. I'm very happy to be bullied on the internet. But I made this prediction on CityCast, actually, our other friend pod, when Paul asked me to record a voice memo and send them, and they played this on the air on like the day after New Year's or whatever. I said, I think every Democratic incumbent is going to survive their primary challenge in Colorado. I think DeGette's going to be fine. She's a client. I should disclose that. I think, Hickenlooper's going to win. And I think on the state legislative level, that's also true. So taking open seats out of the equation, any current elected incumbent will survive their primary challenge, whether it's from the left or from the middle or whatever it is. That's prediction A. Prediction B is I think we're in a political environment right now that is so utterly favorable to Democrats. I mean, a Democrat won a state Senate district in Texas the other night that Donald Trump carried by 17 points.
That's a thing.
That's a cataclysmic event for Republicans. Yeah. So unless something wildly adjusts in the program coming from the White House at this point, and I think we can all agree that it's unlikely to happen. They are damn the torpedoes all the way to the end here, especially to the midterms. And I'm not going to necessarily entertain they won't let us vote. If that's the case, none of this shit matters anyway. So we're not going to have podcasts, right?
I think holding out that there won't be an election as an extreme event.
Sure.
We're not gonna, that's something we will react to if that happens.
Well, I think Gabe Evans is toast. I think Jeff Crank is in deep shit. And I think there's no reason why Jeff Crank should be in deep shit. But I think because of the national political environment and his utter reluctance to stand up to Trump on literally anything, they just took Space Command from his district and moved it to Alabama. He didn't say, he said, "Thank you, sir, may I have another?" And the strength of the likely Democratic nominee in that district, Jessica Killen, I actually think that guy is on the bubble right now.
So if your prediction, I mean, because I have a worry, but I'll pose my worry as a question, which is if your predictions bear fruit and are true, then what is holding incumbent Democrats' feet to the fire to be better governors of the state?
I don't think they're being held to be better governors. I think they're being held to be better messengers. And this is, I think, a really weird, interesting glitch in our current politics. It's all about Why didn't you tweet this? Why didn't you make a statement on this? Why didn't you repost this with the exact words I wanted as an activist to see in this exact order? It is not, why didn't you work on this policy? It is not, why didn't you? Sometimes it's about why did you vote for this or why didn't you vote for this? But that all appears to be in the context of signaling more than it is in the context of policy production or in the concept of doing things. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, we're out of time.
Yeah.
I think I want to make sure that our listeners and watchers know that they can catch you on Get More Smarter.
Get More Smarter, www.getmoresmarter.com. We're on Blue Sky basically only. We have a YouTube channel that I just don't have the time to edit, but we're going to keep putting our interviews up there. So we've interviewed 3 of the 4 Democratic candidates for AG, Michael Dougherty, David Seligman, and Hetal Doshi's interview just went up today as we're recording this. We're going to interview all the Democrats running in CD8. Jason will probably interview Phil and Bennett because I'm conflicted on that race. I used to work for Phil, and leave it at that. But yeah, check us out on getmoresmarter.com. And thank you guys for starting another Colorado Politics podcast. This is wonderful. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, we're going to learn from people who've been doing it a long time. Thanks for being on Crux Politica. And for our listeners, there aren't too many people who know more about democratic politics and the dynamics and the fine tuning. You could hear all those details in Ian's answers. Thanks for being on our show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man.
It's good to see you guys. You didn't even get to make my I'm Henry from the past joke. Who are you? I'm Henry Sobonnet from 30 years ago. How was that? Okay.
That's good.
I loved it.